Okay, and we're live. Over to you, buddy.
Cool. Thank you very much, and welcome to. I don't even know what number of show it is, but welcome to Cool Story, bro. We've had a few numbers already, and today I'm gonna keep the talk going a bit about what we talked a little bit about pre-show, which is energies and how it affects everything in our bodies, in the world, and more or less everywhere. Everyone kind of knows by now that everything is energy, and we even have it in our language when you look at it, when we say that, oh, we're low on energy. That's actually exactly what is happening, because the energy is not flowing anymore. And when the energy is really flowing, you can feel like you have an abundance of energy. And I'm feeling a lot lately that it's a lot connected to how the body is feeling, how the mind is able to process information that's coming through the intuition and that's coming through the universe, and just everything that has to do with getting a flow and being in the world has a lot to do how the body is doing and how you are able to transform the energies that are around you. So I'm going to try to touch a little bit about, on that today. And if it seems a little um, like unprepared, is because we've just been moving, and I'm sitting here right outside our new house, and everything inside looks like a mess. So I pulled some cords out the window, and I'm sitting here, and I have everything prepared, but it still feels like the energy behind me is a little bit of a mumbo jumbo. So I'm going to try the best I can to sort it out still. Yeah, I have a little story that goes with that, with in regards to energy, because most of us have probably felt when we've been into the woods or been to any sacred sites or somewhere that we can actually feel like an uplifting sensation in the body, that everything is just working more in tune. And it's actually because these places have a really high amount of negative ions and all sorts of other things that most people can't measure, but we can still feel it somehow, how it affects our energies, how everything, we just feel sharper, we feel more energetic, and we just feel better. Everything is just more in a flow. And one place where I know there's some super high energies where we were actually able to sleep one night was under the Bosnian pyramids. And apparently there are some of the oldest structures. They call them man-made structures, but I'm not really sure anymore. But some of the oldest structures on Earth. And there's this French researcher who had a way to measure these spiritual energies, or whatever you want to call it, or life force energies, and he calls it the Bovis scale. And if you look at the scale in what we normally know as like a mountaintop or somewhere, we would know there's good energy, there's a lot of energy flowing. The Bovis would be around 5,000. And then if you would go to a Buddhist monastery where they've been meditating for 500 or 1,000 years, it would be around 10,000, which is super high. So good energy, good relaxing, good mental clear-headedness, and all these things that resonates with good high energies. But in these Bosnian pyramids, they would measure between 30,000 and 50,000 bogies. So it was super, super high, and we found it very interesting when we were there. And we could also feel like how the body would be more flexible, and how we would think clearer. And I had the idea to convince one of the guards there that if he would allow us to sleep in there, it would be really cool to see what would happen during a whole night under these. They have these several kilometer long tunnel system under the pyramid grounds, and that's where they measure the highest Bovis energy. So it's kind of a bit like how the body works with its nervous system and the tendons and the meridians, kind of like energy channels. So I think what they were doing was they would harness the energy from, there would be three pyramids, so they would harness the energy between the pyramids and then somehow channel it under this amazingly long tunnel system under the ground. And we then convinced the guard to let us sleep in those tunnels, and we did. But we weren't really able to sleep very much because the energies were so high. So we were just super clear-headed. We couldn't even sleep. None of us. I think we were 4 or 5 people down there, and I think the maximum was probably about 1 hour of sleep, and that was the husband of one of the people who was there, and he was the kind of the least woo-woo guy. So he just slept for 1 hour and said, "Oh, there's nothing here." But most of us others who were kind of sensitive, we couldn't really sleep. And we had this clairvoyant woman there as well, and she sensed a lot of things. Like she connected into people walking around with flowers, like to give to the Mother Earth, and do all these kind of rituals under these tunnels. So she was connecting into some of the old histories of that place, and it was just very, very interesting. So I know we've been talking a lot about the sun and how it's one of the strongest energies, but I also want to put some focus on some of the other energies that are in nature. And for example, if you go into the forest, like old forest, 200, 300, 400 years old, you can also feel, even without being grounded, that you are connecting to these natural energy forces that are healing on the body. I was actually driving a few days ago with my fiance and our daughter, and we had been driving for about an hour, and we were stiff and we were just tired and grumpy. And then we went into the woods, and we just felt like physically how it would peel off the what would probably be the positively charged ions, like all the stress, all the oxidation, all the stuff that happens when you drive the car and you're in your mind. We could actually feel it physically, how it would just almost strip off our skin just by immersing ourselves into the nature, by sitting in the woods. We didn't even have bare feet or anything. We just by being in that energy, which you could probably be able to measure with this Bovis scale. So that was quite interesting to feel it. I've been reading about it for a long time, and I'm just, everyone knows it intuitively that it's good to be in nature and all these things, but actually feeling it physically, all of us, and being able to talk about it, that this is how it works. This is kind of like pulling off the bad stuff and filling it up with good positive energy. That was very interesting. And I think the way it works is with the law of resonance, that our bodies are basically these big antennas that are always trying to communicate with the signals and the energies around us. And when we go into the woods or go into one of these sacred places where the energy is just high, the body wants to resonate with that energy. So it's kind of like trying to find the frequency where there's resonance, and trying to pick up and level out that frequency. So you're basically, the body is trying to resonate with the energies around you. So if you find a place with really high energy, you're actually able to take in that energy and feel the energy of the place yourself. And I think that the more in touch with your body you get, and the more sensitive you become, and the more you're able to calm your mind, the more you will feel these things around you. And everyone knows, if you go into the city and go on the subway and everyone is stressed and everyone is on their phone, it's not the super best energy. And most people are actually able to feel that, even though they're not in touch with anything. And they're also able to feel going into the woods, like how they would relax, or going to the beach, where a lot of negative ions are flushed in by the waters and the sea and the salt water and everything. And it's just really interesting how all that works. And it also brings me to the point about how EMF affects all of this, because we are, if we are these tall standing resonance frequency resonators, then with cell phones in our pockets, always connecting to a tower, then we'll be having something that disturbs our personal field a lot. And I'm actually, unfortunately, able to feel this as well. So my phone is more or less always on flight mode. If I ever keep it on me, it's definitely on flight mode, but most of the time I don't even want to keep it on me. Today I'm actually trying something new. I have my computer connected to the phone to make internet, but the phone is on the ground. So I'm hoping that even would put more of that static electricity, or some of that bad electricity coming from the towers, into the ground instead of going into me. And for anyone not understanding how it really works, it's quite simple actually. You can look at your fridge or your oven, some of the biggest appliances that you have. If they're not grounded, most of them have a grounding cable as well, because if they're not grounded, there would be this static electricity on the top of it, and if you touch it, you can actually feel the bad electricity. And the way I see it, that's exactly how it works with the bodies. So if the bodies are not connected to the ground, or if we're having bad electricity come into us and we try to resonate with that, then we'll be the fridge, which is not grounded. We'll be this tall person, not grounded, will be resonating with bad energies, bad electricity, and it's not going to make us feel very well. And it's not going to make our brains or our organs or our whole internal system work very, very well. But if you're then able to ground, actually you should be grounded more or less all the time. That's how we evolved. then you're also able to increase the voltage, exactly the same as the fridge. The fridge, you can increase the voltage and you won't have any disturbances in the field as long as it's grounded. And the same thing happens with the bodies. And I think that's why we're also able to take in more of the sun's energy when we are grounded, or we are in nature and we are connected to these energies, because that's kind of like how the energies are able to transform, or to be in our bodies without harming the system. Because if we would just take in all this energy without having any outlet for all the bad stuff, then it would just mess up our systems. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people when they're wearing their rubber shoes all day and driving their cars with their rubber tires and walking around in their apartments on third or fourth floor, where they're so disconnected to nature and they're in touch only with all the bad electricity coming out of the walls, and they'll just feel sicker and sicker and sicker. And I've felt that myself a lot of times, and it's actually helped me a lot with the direct experience now, that I feel if I'm not in a good electrical stimulant environment, then I feel it immediately, that I just need to get out of there. I need to get my feet on the ground, or touch a grounding wire or something. And it's just very interesting, like how all these things work. I've been looking into it for many years, but it's not until the direct experience hits you that you're able to really put it into context and feel it directly, how it actually affects you. And another way I've felt it a lot recently is with yoga. Normally I would do my yoga, obviously, like most other people, inside on a rubber mat, disconnected completely from the natural elements that actually makes yoga the beautiful practice that it is. But since moving outside, putting my feet and hands on the ground, it feels exactly like when you move into the postures where you have stuck energies or oxidation or whatever is going on in there, then you're actually able to move into those positions, and then let all the bad stuff flow out through your hands and your feet into the ground. So the ground is picking up on all the stuck energies, the negative chi, or the build up positive ions, or whatever it is that's in the body. And it's kind of like, it's kind of like the earth is there to take that away from us. So if we're not connected to that, then we just keep building up on all that stuff, and that's what makes us sick, and that's what makes us come out of that natural frequency that we're supposed to live in. And then after having all of these experiences and having getting more in touch with my body, getting more in touch with how these things work, then I suddenly saw, which probably is known by a lot of people, but what yoga and qigong and all these practices are actually doing, they're helping us build and increase the capacity to take in more voltage by strengthening our nervous system, our neurons, and our meridians. So it's basically like building a power grid inside our bodies. And if that power grid is strong enough, we can handle way more voltage. And by handling way more voltage, we'll just be more powerful. And that's both physically and mentally, and everything that goes. More or less, all the paranormal phenomena will start coming, because you'll be charging your body with way more energy, and you'll be able to pick up way more. But it's not without a bad side as well, because you'll also be able to pick up more of all the shit that's going on everywhere. If you go if you go to the city, or if you go somewhere else, you will be, at least from my own experience, way more sensitive to all that, and not actually be able to spend much time in crowded places, or in places where there's just really bad energy. So it's very interesting to be aware of. And it also brings me to the next point, which has to do with the feet. And most people also know that the feet are connected, obviously, on the lowest point of our bodies. And it's kind of this big conductor plate that we're walking around on. And if those conductors are not attached to the ground where they're supposed to be, then all of the stimuli that's supposed to come through the meridians, which are all connected under the feet, they don't get the stimuli that they're supposed to get. And this also affects our organs, the whole system again. So it's kind of like, it makes so much sense when you really look at how the body is designed, and especially when you can feel it personally by experiencing it, that this is the way it's supposed to be. We're supposed to be connected to the ground all the time. And if we're not connected to the ground, we'll become sick. Of course, it's possible in short periods of time, but instead of supplementing with grounding, we should be grounded all the time, and then try to just stay outside of the grounding sphere for as little time as possible. And actually, if you look at the feet and how we wear shoes right now, obviously most of us or all of us wear rubber soles, and actually through time they're getting higher and higher and higher, so they're disconnecting us more and more from the natural frequencies of the earth. Even though we walk around in grass, we still wear rubber shoes or rubber soles. And on top of that, we actually, unless you wear white toe box shoes, actually your shoes are more or less going like this, like a triangle. And what that does to your toes is they squeeze them, and they actually squeeze the meridians, the tendons, all those things that are connected to all your organs and the whole energy system. And by this being kind of like the starting point for energy exchange in your body, then if your feet are not aligned, then it's really hard to be able to increase the voltage, because it's kind of like taking some of the cords in an electrical grid and cutting them off, or just squeezing them so that the power won't go through. And one of the things I found that helps a little bit with that is one of these funny fellows, which is called correct toes. And it's funny when you look at it, because when you put it on your toes, you actually realize that, at least for my case, that my toes are completely misaligned. They're more or less triangular, so they're more or less going like this, like most of my shoes has for the whole of my life. But if you put these on and walk barefoot, you can see how the tendons actually try to straighten out, and most toes are actually supposed to look something more like this. And the funny thing is, if you look at people in Asia, Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, they walk a lot bare feet, and they probably haven't had shoes for as long as our generations here in the West have. And they actually have these feet that look more like this. And when you then look at it, the tendons are then aligned, and the tendons actually there's one going straight from the little toe all the way up through the leg, into the knee, into the hip, into some of the organs here, into the shoulder, into the neck. So one of the problems I've been having for my whole life is actually because of my toe alignment. And I'm pretty sure that it's also making me less able to transfer some of those beneficial energies from the ground into my body, and being able to heal some of the stuck energies that are in this whole left side of my body, which I've been having since more or less as long as I remember. I think around 13 years is kind of the furthest back I can remember having problems with this side. And I don't think enough people talk about these things, because I've been going to chiropractors, physiotherapists, massage therapists, everything. No one ever told me that I need to correct my toes and walk barefoot. So I kind of had to figure that out myself. And I'm not sure how much any of you have looked into that as well, but I find it very, very clear that it's almost like there's a conspiracy against our toes, like putting us in rubber soles and squeezing them all together. You can see the same with women feet as well. You kind of, with high heels, you take them high off the ground, and you create a tension in their Achilles, and also squeezing their toes very, very narrow together. And if you look at it from a more physical perspective, if your toes are the start of your foundation, you are basically a tall building trying to hold your balance all the time. If your foundation of your building is not strong, then you will affect the whole structure. And if you look at it in building science, if your foundation is not strong, the building will fall down, and it's not going to be a very healthy building. So I think there needs to be a lot of focus on our feet, both the connection to the ground, obviously, but also how the feet actually function. How often do you look at your feet and train the muscles in your feet? There's like, I think it's more than 150 different muscles in the feet, and no one ever talks about it. We all talk about biceps and chest muscles and all these things. And actually the feet are the most amazing set of extra hands. And I'm sure if you train them, you could be almost just as good as a monkey by using your feet. And I think that's what most of the climbers that climb free climbing without shoes, what they experience after some time, that the amount of power you can put on a tendon after really training it is amazing. You could probably train yourself to hang by your toes if you wanted to, if you take it far enough. So that's just really interesting again, and it also brings me to the next point, which has to do with posture, which aligns very much with this. Since if your posture is already wrong from the level of your feet, then it will affect your posture up through your knees, through your hips, through your back, obviously everywhere. So if you're not able to fix your toes first and your feet first, then you'll never be able to have a perfect posture, or like be able to move the way that your body is designed to move. So um, I think it's one of the very most important places to start. And I've just completely, I haven't overlooked it completely, but like being on this journey, trying to heal my body and trying to heal my mind and trying to become flexible and see how much energy I can take in, it just made a lot of sense to start looking at the feet again. And I'm obviously wearing barefoot shoes if I do wear shoes. And I just ordered these leather sole moccasins for whenever I need to wear shoes and I can't just go barefoot. Because if we look a little bit at the history of how humans have evolved, yeah, basically we are born without shoes, obviously. And then if you look at how some of the native Indians and how some of the other native peoples they live, they started wearing leather hides. And same with the skis, for example. If you look here in Sweden where I am, when people started skiing, they would be skiing on wooden boards and they would wear leather soles or leather shoes. They would still be connected to the snow and the earth and everything in between. And now everyone wears rubber or plastic shoes and plastic skis, or skis made out of something that's not conductive anymore. And it's the same with our cars. We have rubber tires on our cars. Before we were riding with the horse and carriage with wooden wheels, and the horses would obviously be connected to the ground. The wooden wheels would be connected to the ground, so we would still be grounded all the time. Or we would sleep outside in a tent on the ground. So it's just very, very interesting how disconnected we actually are, how we live most of our lives inside and then supplement with grounding, supplement with sunshine, supplement with nature when we are of nature and we're supposed to be in nature. And then the other stuff is just when we need to go inside or whatever we need to do. It's become so comfortable for us to living these lives inside that we think of it as something we need to supplement with, when it needs to be actually the basis of our living for a healthy life in nature and in the world. And so what are the solutions to some of all this stuff that I've come up with? Is basically the shoes. When I have to wear shoes, I'll be wearing them with a wide toe box, so my toes can start falling into the places they're supposed to be from the beginning. And then wear something like these correct toes to try to correct the toes back in. And then for something like right now, when we have a meeting online, I would try to be as grounded as possible without having my body need to try to resonate with the frequencies of the computer, which are a lot higher than what the body can take in. And then the body automatically thinks that must be the best source of resonance to be in. So that's actually what happens with EMF. The body sees this high source of power and it tries to resonate with that, and it creates a lot of misfortune, because it's just very unhealthy to be in that bad frequency of computers. Then I have a solution for using headphones. There's these things called air tubes, which basically the last part of the headphone is connected just with air. I actually have one pair here, which is you can see that is the tube here. If you squeeze it, then there's no sound coming through. So it's basically no wires here and just air coming through the last part. It helps a little bit. I can feel the difference with that. And yeah, the good part about being sensitive is you can feel immediately if there's something that's not working, or if there's something disturbing your field. And I've actually think about now, I've been testing about 3,000 or 4,000 euros worth of equipment from everywhere. There's all these resonance stickers you can put on your phones, and there's this bracelets, and there's a lot of things you can do. There's even shungite crystals and these orgonite crystals. I've tried everything. I haven't found anything that works as good as grounding, because when you're grounded, then you'll be in the resonance of the earth, and everything else that's trying to come into your field is kind of like bouncing off, because it's just going straight into the ground instead. So yeah, very interesting topic, and happy to answer any questions, or happy to hear what you have to think, or what you think about some of all of these things, which are very, very present in our lives right now, because that's how we live. We live basically disconnected, and that's how most people feel today. But they can't really put words to what is happening. They just feel disconnected. And I think most of the cravings that everyone have in this world right now, whether it's money, women, or all these things, it's actually the craving for nature and reconnecting with the natural energies that are masking as needs of or needs or greeds or all these things that we have in the world right now, and trying to fill up the biggest hole that we're missing, which is the natural connection. So happy to hear what you have to say about that.
Cool. Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I think we've spoken about a lot of this stuff, obviously, in person as well. And yeah, I know I bang on about sunlight all the time. It's like, for me, it's been the most powerful, factor in my journey, my experience. And I think that, like you're saying, a lot of the sort of unease, or like the sort of default physiological state for people today, is sort of stress and scarcity. And that's coming because, like I say, you've got a massive hole in what your body is used to evolving under. So if you take like sunlight, we talked about this before, but you take sunlight, if you're under the sun, you're taking about 100,000 lux, which is like units of brightness. And your whole physiology is kind of wired into that, right? You have melanin in your eyeballs and skin that absorbs that energy. You have ATP that makes ATP in mitochondria from infrared light from the sun. You basically have all these systems inside. You make vitamin D from UV. So all of these systems is like really, really old, intelligent design that's plugged into these energy sources. The sun is just one of the most powerful ones, obvious ones out there. And if you're missing that and you're indoors, basically from a light bulb, you get about 500 lux. So that's like trying to live on like less than 1% of your daily calories, and hoping you're going to get by somehow and be okay. And obviously you're not, right? That's going to be like a huge deficit every day. You wake up with a deficit. You spend more than you're getting. You're basically digging up huge credit card and overdraft bills every day and then wondering why you don't feel great. So I kind of call this biological bank account. That's like one way of looking at it that people who are very left brain can kind of, get. But basically, if you're not under that natural influence and environment, you're going to living with this default stress and scarcity. And people, we try to use meditation and food and whatever, yoga and all these kind of things to kind of correct it. But fundamentally, it's just such a huge foundation that's missing. And just like you said with the toes and the toe conspiracy, which we can call this show the toe conspiracy, because it's quite funny. But it's just like that. It's like the foundation of things are missing. So for me, sunlight has been massive. I mean, it's reversed a lot of problems of deficit, basically, like physically and mentally. So because if physically you're not well, mentally you're not going to feel well, and you're always going to try to get more things, right? So you're going to be trying to acquire more money, maybe acquire a new car, acquire this, acquire that. You're always needing more because you're missing something, and then that missing goes away when you actually have what your body needs, what your body craves. So the light is very, very measurable, like it's very objective. Some of the other stuff we're talking about is maybe more subtle. I think the grounding is probably pretty huge too. Like I moved my exercise routine every day outside on the grass a few years ago. And that's also when I started getting to the sun more. And it was massive. I've played around with these grounding mats and grounding tools and all this stuff for years ago. And to be honest, it doesn't matter so much if you're still in a deficit, because you're still in a deficit. It doesn't change that. It just kind of reduces some of the damage you're taking from the environment. Like you're saying, if you're under heavy EMF, all that damage you're taking, you can release some of that through grounding. But if your physical nervous system's not strong, you're still not going to have the resilience. And I think that a lot of people are experiencing that, either like acutely, they can feel headaches when they're under EMF, or just like chronically, they're just tired and fatigued more. They can't run as fast as they used to. They get sore when they go to the gym. All this kind of, gradual things you put down to aging. A lot of it is sort of premature because of the environments we're living in. So so I've just been spending as much time barefoot. I mean, I don't even wear shoes anymore unless I'm going somewhere, and I don't commute to work anymore. I'm working from home. I'm outside in the garden. So I'm barefoot as much as possible. I wear these open toe shoes when I go running, and that feels really nice. I've been meaning to try out those sort of barefoot running shoes, but I haven't got around to it. But yeah, I'm spending a lot more time barefoot. My toes are opening up a lot more than they used to be very hunched together. I think with women, it's another layer of toe conspiracy, because like you said, they're wearing the heels, and that completely puts your posture out. Like I told my wife so many times, no heels, no heels, no heels. It's just going to add to whatever health issues you're going to experience in life later. Because if your posture's out from the foundation, you're screwing up everything else. All your other alignment's going to be out. So it's not just a disconnection from the earth and the grounding, but it's that massive, slant you have in the shoes, and they get higher and higher and higher. It seems every year. So she's never liked it anyways, and so it wasn't hard to convince her to stop doing it. But because she grew up in Asia, she's from Singapore, like I was saying, that part of the world generally don't wear as many closed shoes because it's not so cold. So she's used to walking around all the time just open toes, and she's got levels of toe control that I had never seen. Like I can't do half the stuff she does with the toes just because she didn't have them closed in a box for years. So it sounds funny, but like this is a natural human experience, right? And we just look at it, it's like that's funny. So I always laugh when it looks like her toes are like an alien or something hanging off the end of her foot because she can move around and does weird shit with them, and I'm just like laughing. I'm just like, I don't know how you even do that. So obviously, I've got a lot of rehab to do on my feet, but they feel pretty good now, just being grounded and barefoot a lot more. And she hates wearing closed toes. Like she hates putting socks on even because she feels it's restricting the energy. So I think that foundation of what you're saying is like, whether it's a conspiracy and it's deliberate or whatever, it's just negligent. We kind of lost our way. If that foundation's off, you're not gonna have energy be able to flow through the body. And another really powerful thing that I'm experimenting with at the moment is like barefoot grounded in the sand, and the sand actually has a lot of crystals in it, and crystals are it's a very old form of like coherent energy and light, because it's basically the sand's getting pounded all day with sun, right? And so it's got a lot of stored energy in the sand, and the sand is mostly quartz crystal, but the good beaches. So if you stand in that sand and you're taking in sun, and you just do that regularly, you're going to feel amazing. This is why people go to the beach instinctively. We know this. We haven't lost that. It's like first thing you want to do when you have some free time and you're not in the matrix is you want to go to the beach and you want to go feel good, and everyone does that, right? It's like the beaches are packed. So it's just like the body knows how to make itself better, and we just kind of get in the way, with other stories that come and kind of dictate to us how we should spend our time in our lives. But yeah, so I've been working a lot more with that, the energy from the sand and the beach. And we actually talked before the show with Nick about the four elements and some of our thoughts on how those things really feed into the body. So, we're basically disconnected from all four of those elements: earth, air, fire, water. And you get all of those near the beach, for example. Like that's where the most life on earth tends to be, is where those elements cross over. So you have obviously the earth from the grounding and the sand. You have the fresh air from the ocean, a lot of negative ions coming in, like you said, because the water's hitting and that produces negative ions. So you're breathing in really fresh, highly charged chi air. You've got the fire from the sun. If you've got sun in the sky, that's powerful. And then you've got the water from the ocean, and that again it is also grounding. When you're totally in the ocean, you're totally grounded. So those energies on a daily basis, I mean, it's just literally how our physiology is evolved to thrive under. If you have those things on a daily basis, I think it's almost impossible to get disease. That's my personal experience, just how I'm feeling day after day after day of doing this. And there are some other things you can do to absorb more light. And I was again posting about this recently, but I've been using psilocybin and magic mushrooms, and basically, if you look how they act in nature, they can actually survive in the vacuum of space. So that means outside of the Earth's magnetic field, outside the Earth's atmosphere, most life can't survive. I think mushrooms are the only thing that can, and they're able to absorb so much radiation, which would destroy most of the life. And that energy it holds, you can actually tap into that by also taking these plants. And it's actually not a plant, it's a fungus. So it's older than plants. But this energy, if you combine those things, so if you take mushrooms, then go to the beach, stick your feet on the sand with the crystals, stare into the sun. I stare into the sun for like 6 to 8 hours sometimes. And when I'm on mushrooms, I can feel the difference in my body's ability to counteract the radiation or absorb the radiation. And I'm not as resilient when I'm just, normally sun gazing without that magic. So nature has given us sort of many, many, many tools to, like you said, grow your body's voltage, grow your nervous system. Again, lion's mane is another mushroom. You can regrow your nervous system. A lot of the reason why we don't have the capacity for the stress is because our nervous systems are quite weak. And you can see it with like motor diseases like MS, brain diseases like Alzheimer's and autism. These things are basically happening because of our unnatural environment. It's demyelinating the nerves. So the nerves that carry the information between all your body, it has like a sort of like a sheath, which is like an insulating layer, and that actually affects the conductivity of information passing through and how fast it can pass through, so how efficient that information transfer is. And when your nerves are getting demyelinated because you don't have enough of that sheath, then basically everything slows down, right? So you might even have trouble talking, you might get a stroke, you might get these really gradual diseases like Alzheimer's and MS that we're seeing more and more and more of. And in kids today with autism, there's all kinds of factors involved there. But fundamentally, it's the energy we're being exposed to that is breaking that myelin sheath down in the nerves. Then they start to degrade. and you can regrow these things with plants like lion's mane. And so I've been taking high dose lion's mane to again increase my tolerance to stress from like the sun and radiation from the sun. And these things are just super powerful tools that no one talks about, because there's the big pharma can't patent it, and they got better drugs for you. So it's really obviously about looking, like you say, you look around and no one knows this stuff. So you really got to go on your own journey of kind of discovering and finding out what's true, what works for you, and really questioning everything that you're kind of brought up to believe. And obviously what our parents believe, which is half the time just, big pharma stories. So that's been my kind of journey. I'll hand over to Lynn. He's got something to say.
He's got a question for you guys actually regarding, firstly talking about Toegate. When I think back to my time when I've been in Hawaii a couple of times, I've been very fortunate enough, and like you said, their toe control games on a different level. It was, you're talking monkey levels right there. It's really, really incredible. And also, like you're saying, because even I've been somewhere like Bahamas, though they're both very associated with beaches and so on, it seems that the Hawaiians are still more in touch. There's a bit less of a Western interference. They're still in touch of being out in the sea, in the sand. And so there's a massive difference in toe control. It's really weird how you brought it up. I've never thought of it, but when I think back, I'm like, yeah, I can see that. I can see that definitely be the case. Because what I noticed in those countries, they don't really, it's open toe. They're wearing flip flops, or slippers. They're not really wearing shoes, and it's kind of acceptable to always be like that. And it's just an easy step in, step out of sand. And that feeling is lovely. I just want to touch on that. But also RFID blockers. So what's used say on phones, like. They're using them a lot in comedy venues now, where they put a phone in a case so you can't get signal to interrupt the show or record anything, and then they'll lock it. Are you guys aware of anything? Well, first, two questions. One, how good is that against 5G that we're going to be battling against very soon? And secondly, are you aware of any wearable RFID blockers that are on the market at all? Or is that, we'll put it out to all of you guys, if you've heard of those at all.
I can probably answer this just from, I shared a link just before to a mate of mine, Jason Borden-Smith, who is mates with mind blank. What's his Jack Cruz, and he says he's done a lot of testing on all these wearables, and basically says that none of them work, including like all the gadgets for your phone and all that. So I haven't checked it myself, but I do respect what he has to say. And then, in regards to the 5G, that's a really big one, because there's people becoming more and more aware of that, and especially in the cities and the mega cities, and they're going to be on every single block. They're going to be in every single light. Every few meters is going to be everywhere. They've just put 20,000 satellites into space as well, I believe, or are going to. I'm pretty sure they're already there, though. So and now that people are getting more aware of it, it's real easy to go into a state of fear. And I think that as a creative being, I think that part of what we can do is to shift this is pretty woo-woo, but to shift out of that fear space and deliberately phase ourselves out of any technology that's not in our highest alignment. Because on some level, in our everyday lives, just the way that we are, there's going to be satellites, there's going to be phone reception, there's going to be Wi-Fi signals, you're going to go through the Sydney, you're going to be getting beamed by all these different things at different points in time. And, I feel like there's some work that we can all do to, and this is something that just a reminder for myself, is to set the intention at least to phase myself out of any technology like that, or to do the best that I can to put up my own barriers, if you will, even if it's just energetically or psychological or metaphysical, to not be affected by that. Whether it be whether that's actually true or not, that's a whole nother base, scientific and all that kind of thing. But at some point in time, when the whole world is kind of getting covered in 5G, there's got to be more that we can do other than just be okay, well, we're getting cellular and mitochondrial damage every time we step outside. I just wanted to sort of pop that one in there.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think just the basic science question, obviously, just because you wrap your phone in something that's supposed to protect you from 5G, all the towers are still there. So it's, it's going to be hitting you regardless. Like, I think the strength of your body's field, you can talk about the nervous system as one example I just kind of mentioned, but you have obviously like a whole electromagnetic field around you, and how strong that is will affect how much stress you can be around. I used to worry a lot more about going through body scanners at airports and things like that, and being in cities. But honestly, I don't even worry about it that much anymore. Like, when I go through on those body scanners now, I used to ask for pat downs and stuff and like try and avoid it. But now when I go through, I just have a sort of visualization of like, I'm a supreme being, nothing can damage me, nothing can touch me. And then whatever happens in that moment, I go through, I feel totally fine. And if there was some damage, our body's just repairing it the next second, right? So we're constantly regenerating, repairing. Our bodies are not like this fixed static system. So if some damage happens, then obviously the body has repair mechanisms. You need to understand what those mechanisms are. And again, like I talk about this a lot when it comes to oxidation, when it comes to stress, it's things like glutathione, melatonin, these natural antioxidants the body makes itself and recycles all the time in the body. So if you understand how the systems work and you know how to upregulate them, and you have a strong system internally and your energy field is strong, you've got lines made for your nervous system and all these things like that, you're going to have a pretty strong body and energy field, and you can be around a lot more stress. And I personally am not sensitive to anything. Like, I don't get headaches, I don't get this and that. I think if I was in a city for months at a time with no nature, obviously I'd start to feel like disconnected like everyone else. But I don't have this sort of impending doom around all this technology coming around, because personally I just feel really, really good. I feel better and better. And I'm looking at the sun for, like I said, 6 to 8 hours some days. I mean, if you can handle that amount of stress or radiation, there's honestly nothing that humans can come up with that is as powerful as that. That is like the master, focused beam of light you'll ever experience. I mean, it's so strong people say it'll blind you, and it's just because they're denatured. But I think, when you really start to connect with the stronger energies, your body just becomes almost as powerful as the sun in that aspect. That's how I feel. That's how it really feels. So I think it's more focusing on how to build the body up than of like how to avoid all these stresses and things like that. And obviously at the beginning, you might need to do some of that. If you're sleeping next to a router, I mean, that's pretty dumb. Just switch it off or whatever. But the long-term focus should be on building your body's resilience up in the day-to-day consistent practices that you do, right? So it's like you have 24 hours a day. How much of that you're spending indoors versus outdoors? How much of that you're spending sitting down versus moving? I mean, all these things kind of make a difference as to how energy moves in the body and where it gets stuck. And so, I'm just making more and more of a conscious effort to get outside as much as possible. I've just been outside for this call for like two hours on the grass doing yoga, sun gazing. I'm going to go back outside, do a run to the beach later. Like, this is just part of my daily routine now, because I know what makes me feel amazing, and I'm just going to keep doing it, and I feel better and better. So yeah, it's really about consistency as to how your body kind of entropies and atrophies, and most people's bodies are, or it kind of builds up and builds up, and you just have like a surplus because you're putting all the good things in your biological bank account, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. And I know from being in Portugal with you that it definitely works, and I felt absolutely amazing during those days, just being outside. And that's what I felt as well by traveling long term in Asia as well, just being in my bare feet, my swim shorts, nothing, no keys, no nothing, just being able to be completely free on the ground with as little clothes as possible is actually very, very liberating. One point I want to make is that it can be because of some other stuff, or because of the lack of enough resilience or something. But I feel like the better I feel with all the stuff I've been doing, like how I felt when I came back from Portugal was absolutely amazing, and I still have some of that. And I guess it will probably be the contrast then in the real world, coming back to the real world. I feel that a lot tougher, whether it's because I'm getting more sensitive and feeling the contrast more, or I'm not really sure what that can be, because I would think that building my nervous system and repairing some of all these things by eating the lion's mane and doing all these practices and everything, I feel better and better. But I also feel the difference stronger and stronger by being in a shitty environment, whether that's a bad side effect or just a way of the body telling me that I don't want any of this stuff anymore, get the hell out of here. Or how does it work? Because I would love to be able to just say, oh, it doesn't touch me, now I'm super powerful, but I just feel it very, very strongly, and it affects everything from thinking power, motivation. I guess it has to do obviously with the dopamine and everything, and I feel it very, very strongly. And I can't figure out whether it's because I haven't built enough resilience yet, or because I'm just getting more and more sensitive.
Go on, Nick.
I was just going to say, This is actually like a really interesting point as we get more and more sensitive, and I actually feel like a lot like you, Emil. But I've got sort of like a bit of a practical example, and that's my girlfriend who's a psychic. And so as we travel around the world and we go to these sacred sites, and she's able to tune into these energies, or we go into these different cities, and whether we go to somewhere like Rome, and you can kind of feel different layers of whether it be religious or sacred site stuff, or like a water spring or a pagan site. There's there is the element of definitely what Michael says, like building up your resilience and your immunity and kind of charging up your battery. But then there's also there's the other part to it as well, which is like being able to be more and more sensitive and kind of get really more detailed through our level of awareness and our sensitivity to feeling things on a bodily and experiential level. And so as we refine that, we're literally like feeling more. And so how do you balance that? How do you gain more power? How do you, as you get more sensitive and sort of don't get overwhelmed by these different sites that you go to? So we live on like a couple of the most powerful sites in the world, and other people go here and they completely just flip out because it's full of obsidian. It's like a male initiation site. It's like where the sun first hits the earth each day. It's just charged up, and people just come and flip out, or like even in Glastonbury, where we also go, where the veil between worlds is thin. It's like this is where people have been going on pilgrimages for like a very long time, and it's where like a lot of ceremony was done, where a lot of witches have gone, where a lot of druids have gone, or pagans have gone, and people are very sensitive, and they get very like caught up in here. So there's definitely like that element of being really sensitive, but then there's that like the element of being very grounded and clear and being able to discern between what's yours and what's not yours. So you talk about feet and being grounded and being aware of like your feet on the ground. It's like when you're going through these sites and you're becoming really sensitive, do you know what's going on inside yourself? Do you know what's yours? Do you know what's not yours? Like, are you aware of like where the energy is coming from? Are you aware of like how your energy field is moving through the site? Like, have you set your intentions? Like what Michael said, like I'm a divine spark of creation, so therefore like nothing can harm me, or my highest good is like will always show me the path, or whatever your mantra is. There's ways to move through these really powerful sites. There's ways to charge up our internal battery and kind of strengthen that immunity, but while at the same time getting more and more sensitive. And this is where the earth, air, water, fire purification comes into it. And this is where like spending lots of time in natural bodies of water comes into it. This is why spending fire like every day if possible is like comes into it. Like one of the best things I've found is really getting into the natural bodies of water is a really big thing. If I've been in like electrical pollution or a city or whatever, if I just jump in like the river or the beach or a lake or what have you, it's just instantly like feel like my energy feels being cleared, or if I'm like tuning into something as well. And what I've found is that as we go to these different sites in the world, what you'll find is that they're sacred sites because that's where the water is. And so like whether it be the pyramids or whether it be like a sacred water spring or like all these different places we go to, we give offerings to the land, we give offerings to the water, we get in the water, we get 3 times under, we do our breath work, or we just sit there and just be with the elements. But what I've really found is that like the supercharged water, the sacred sites where all the power is, or where all the energy lines or song lines go through, generally find that there's a lot to do with like the flow of water. And so like there's a real key there, like along with the sun, there's like, let's not miss out on the spending time with the fire and the water as well, because they're like equally as powerful. And this is definitely like not my work. It's like everyone's been talking about this for decades and like a very long period of time, but it's sort of like the purification. What's described as purification is that the fire's burning your energy up, the water's washing the energy down, and spending time with these elements, deepening our relationship to nature and to these elements is a way to think about it is in regards to purification, not in a culty way, not in some kind of like, oh, we've got to be pure, but definitely like in a way of like having your energy field clear of these different impurities, and by having them washed away, having them burned up, having them like immersed in nature is a way to keep that field clear. So as we're walking through these sites, as we're going through our daily lives, the more that we do these different things and become more sensitive, we're able to feel how differently we feel after we spend time in the water. Like if you go out, if you go to a restaurant, if you go to the city and you come back and you have like a creek or a river or even a shower that comes from the spring, you just get in the water, or you have the fire, and instantly like you just notice like all these little things that like you may have picked up, or that will kind of getting a little heavier, or you're kind of getting a little bothered by something and you don't really know what it is. And as we sharpen and fine tune these senses through as we get more connected to nature, there's kind of like, yeah, I wanted to bring that to conversation because there's definitely like charging up, and there's also the constant purification process that allows us to not get overwhelmed and to sort of keep our field clear so we can, strengthen our immunity.
Thank you for that. That means a lot. I've never thought about it that way with fire purification. I've done a lot of incense burning and stuff, and I felt how that could clear some stuff. But I guess a real fire would be even more powerful. And I definitely can resonate with what you say about the water, because I remember in the Bosnian pyramids, actually one of the reasons why the energy was so high was because the water was flowing under. There was like underground tunnels under the tunnels we were sleeping in, with water, like natural water reservoirs that were flowing back and forth and generating this kind of energy. And it links very well also with something I heard on actually a Jack Kruse podcast yesterday or the other day, that he very strongly believes, and has a lot of information to back that up, that our memories are actually stored in the water in the cells and not really so much in the brain. So what we're really tapping into with these sacred sites is probably the memories of the information contained in the water in these. So that's makes a lot of sense, like why you would go to these sacred sites, to connect to very, very old memories in the water. So that's very cool to know that. I'll definitely try to get some more into the water. Right now, our new place where we just moved is right outside a big lake. Right now there's ice on there, but I might still chop a hole in the ice or wait until a little bit more springtime and start doing some more regular water bathing in natural sources, because I definitely need it, because the sensitivity is going up, and there's no one giving you a manual for this stuff. So we have to figure it out on our own by anecdotes and by trying with direct experience. And it can be a little tough sometimes, because not a lot of people talking about this. So thanks a lot for sharing that. I definitely try to bring that more into my everyday energy game.
I think the point earlier, I think Nick made it about entrainment, and basically like you're constantly going to resonate and entrain to what's around you. And so the reason why the water's so powerful is because instantly you're submerged in it, right? And it's suddenly the most powerful thing in your environment. So whether there's memories in the water from history and around sacred sites, that's super interesting. But even just the benefit of like plunging into a lake, or plunging into the ocean, it's going to be, like Nick said, it's a purification, because your body's instantly going to resonate and entrain to that natural energy, and that's something our physiology has just evolved under. It's the same with sunlight. You resonate to the sunlight, the frequency of the sunlight. Same when you're grounding, you resonate to the frequency of the earth, and that it has its own Schumann's resonance. So all those frequencies are basically fields that are coherent. And this is the point I want to kind of make around coherence. You can measure coherence like through the heart, through the brain, these fields that they put out, and it's basically what generates the electromagnetic field around us. And if we're constantly surrounded by incoherent information light, it's going to basically scramble that. Our body has no way of handling and deciphering that information. So it's like almost like it's just like noise, and our body has to kind of figure out how to filter that out or flush it out. And that's why having a daily routine where you're sort of purifying or resonating and training back to the natural coherent frequencies is so powerful, because that's the way you build yourself up. but also release and let anything pass through that's maybe come into your system. Like I'm not super sensitive to EMF as such, like with technology devices, but I am quite sensitive if I'm around like people who are just have, because again, people pick up shit and then they just put it out just like EMF. I mean, they're just a bunch of people just reinforcing what they've heard and stories and shit. Like, so I'm quite sensitive to that if I'm around a lot of people. Strangers I can kind of block out, but if I'm like in a group or something and there's like people I know and I'm like in that group, I can sense pretty strongly like the energies and presences in that room, and that tends to affect me if I'm around a lot of people who are sort of energy vampires. And there's a lot more than you would think. It's another massive, maybe a conspiracy or something, I don't know, but when you're really sensitive to energy, you can feel the energy these people give off. Some of them just want to drain you dry, like they just want to create drama. If there's no drama, they just want to, there has to be something always going on. And so now, like, I used to be the type of person that wanted to help those people, and now I'm just like, you know what, you got to go through your own journey. You got to balance your own energy. I don't want to put myself into a situation where I'm like under stress because I'm trying to help people like that. So, so I'm a lot more careful about who I spend time around. Like, I'm suss out within 5-10 minutes if I'm going to have a good time with this person or not. And I tend to find isolating quite powerful because you're not around that city or that dense urban population, dense environment where a lot of people's energy is also concentrated, and you just sense it if you're on the subway, like you said, or in London or in Singapore, and you can sense the collective energy of these people. They're not happy. They're putting off, whatever you want to call it, this energy. I'm quite sensitive to that actually more than EMF. So I'm sure we have other senses beyond the 5 senses. We can start to feel into some of this stuff and intuit some of this stuff, and maybe that's where again we can be more careful about who we spend time with. Are these people, do they have their own rituals to purify themselves, or they just walk around picking shit up for years and years and then just spewing it out around them, like I think a lot of people do? So that's something to be really mindful of, is like, the people you spend time with, and especially if you care about them, because then I think when you care about something, you tend to entrain closer to that person emotionally, physically. You actually will take in that energy, and it's a lot easier to maybe block that if you just don't care about them or they're a stranger. So it's a heavy sort of energy, like a collective in a city, but also one-to-one or in a small group. If you're in an intimate setting, or you care about someone, you can pick stuff up. You'd be surprised where it comes from, and then the next day you're like, where that shit's still with me. I need to go jump an ocean or something. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely very interesting. I have a little question in regards to that. You think that the reason why they're actually trying to gain energy from someone else is because they're also denatured. They're lacking the natural energies from nature, and they're trying to find it in other sources. So they're trying to unconsciously attack other people's energy centers to be able to fill them up with the stuff that they're actually missing from nature.
Yeah, I think that's a part of it, that some people feed off drama. It's almost like an addiction. People have an addiction to stress and those chemicals and hormones as well. So like they find whatever they need to trigger that. If there's nothing, then they'll just create an argument or create some stress or some small thing, some small detail, and go off about it, and then everyone's upset, and then gives them attention, right? Because then they become the center of attention. So it's a lot about getting attention and needing to be the center of attention. Again, like energetically, there's other issues when people are drinking. Again, like we don't even think about this stuff. When people drink alcohol, you're opening your energy up to all kinds of spirits and information that can sense there's sort of a way in. So this whole culture we have around drinking lots of booze every Friday night, every weekend, all kinds of energy can come into those people, and it's happening on a mass scale. Like it's just way more than you'd even think. And then these people hold on to these sort of weird spirits or energies or qualities, and then those things come out through the person and again try to feed off that person's energy and then feed off the energy around them. So energy vampirism, I mean, it's a deep topic. I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but just what I read is like it rings and resonates very true for me, like the energy that people can give off, and I'm a lot more sensitive to that. So that's something I have to be more mindful of.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Because piggybacking on what Mike was saying about detecting, like being sensitive to people's intentions. Like from my background from fighting, there was an exercise we often used to do in our classes where you'd have the lights off and you'd have to spar in the pitch black. Like you'd wrap your eyes up as well, and you're sparring. So initially you're trying to pick up on, you're trying to hear them shuffling around because you can't see. You're trying to mainly you rely on your ears, and then there's another exercise you do where you cover the ears as well. And so you'd go, I mean, this wasn't usual for the type of martial arts we're doing. This is something my dad used to add in to spice up the mix. But he didn't have the particular wording for it, but you were training to be able to pick up on intention and like, you've got bloodlust sort of thing, or however you want to phrase it. So that's one way that I can definitely anecdotally agree that I've experienced that myself, where after enough time, even you don't have to train doing that, but when you then do it, everything sort of comes together after years of putting yourself through these situations where you can kind of feel roughly where someone is, or in your vicinity. Are they doing something? You know, are they punching? Are they kicking? Yeah, it's just interesting how you said that. It kind of brought that back to mind. It's things I took for granted, but you're right. And that's why I could never really dismiss anyone saying that they do or don't feel something. It's just I've just not experienced it yet, or I haven't had the words, or I've not had someone else say it in a way that I could understand. I think that's probably the biggest disconnect, where there's probably so many of the experiences going around, but it's just because it's not something that a word can do justice to, or that can correctly explain. You have to experience it. That's why it's really interesting speaking to you guys, hearing about what you're doing to achieve certain experiences is a way to, I guess, for others to also do it. So I'm looking forward to putting some of those into practice as well. I'm going to definitely think a lot differently when I next go to a beach, that's for sure.
And I think women maybe have an unfair advantage when it comes to some of this, like sensing awareness, because I took magic the other day and my wife was just having a normal day, and I came inside and suddenly I could sort of sense the way she normally senses, and people always say she's got an open third eye and all this kind of stuff, whatever that means. But in terms of like sensing awareness, I could sort of sense when she wasn't fully present, like her attention was slightly divided, and it was so strong for me. And she says, that's how it just normally is for me every day, all the time. Like she just has that sense turned on and it's heightened. So I think, women tend to have some things upregulated, men have other things upregulated, and you can take plants, you can take other experiences and environments and heighten senses that maybe are dulled down a little bit, or just, not sharpened. And that's definitely something I experienced. I was super sensitive, and I was like, wow, this is what it's like having Como sense. That's my wife's name. And I just felt like I could sense that she was sensing all the time. And I was like, this is a super unfair advantage you've got over me, because, I can't get with anything, basically.
Yeah, that's like the levels of perception like that come through some of the different experiences, whether it be by simple breathing or whether by plant medicine. And like what you guys are just talking about before, I really relate to the shamanic scene, especially people that have spent some time in the ayahuasca scenes or spent some time in Peru. I've been down there for months at a time, and as you go through these different cycles, and your kind of sensitivity and your level of awareness sort of goes through that same progression, you then kind of come to some different realizations about things like other people's energies and energy vampires and even kind of like what the shamans are doing on an energetic level. And it sort of got to the point where like a lot of the experienced like medicine people that I talk to now will not even like have like more than a few people that they can recommend in like all of South America that they would ever go to, or like some of them have like completely like given it up until they like can find the proper way to connect with different plants or develop their own relationship with it. Because like as they become more sensitive, they become aware of like what's going on, and like for me as well, like there's only like there's like one family that I'll go to, like three people, like one like two different like shamans, and it's like there's just like a lot of fuckery basically, and then also like the people that kind of do like have that sense of clarity or like clearness or that inner power or like inner knowing, like they tend to draw in like kind of like the cicadas to a light kind of thing, where it's like that kind of beam of light like attracts these different things. And if you're like starting to do like all your qigong and your sun gazing and all these things and really sort of starting to be in your power, like the moths will come.
A magnet for the feeding.
Yeah, and so like part of that sensitivity is being able to keep your energy field clear. That's not from any kind of negative like protection, like keep it all out, all that kind of stuff. But the like being grounded and like knowing what it means to be grounded, because I thought I was grounded all the time, and as I did more grounding exercises, I realized how ungrounded I was. And then I continued to do more of these different movement practices, which is a mix of different movement things in nature, and not getting locked into a certain movement thing, and or doing like breath work and meditation, whatever it is. It's like just these like kind of key realizations, or these like levels of perceptions that we have at these periods in time. And it's like, oh, actually, like I'm not even in my body, and I thought I was like super zen and grounded. And it's like like even being at the computer, it's kind of like up and out of the body all the time. There's like a constant checking in. And so it's like, if you're not aware of like you being in your body, then what is there? And it's like, not from like, you know, like a lot of the shamanic people and plant medicine people in general get really caught up in like negative entities and all that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff specifically, but it's like, you know, there's ways to kind of be fully you. There's ways to be sensitive while being in power and acknowledging like your role as a creator being, and acknowledging that no one else has the right to enter your energy field without your permission, and like, you know, it's kind of like just being, again, it comes back to the presence and moment to moment realizations. But it's kind of like, you know, if you're not aware of like vampires, or you're not aware of like the people that are in your vicinity, or there's these things that are being reflected to that you're not picking up on, or your energy feels polluted, or you're not spending, you know, the time in nature. These are all these different ways, or like hooks. Maybe there's trauma that you haven't dealt with yet as well. That's another key one. Maybe you're drinking, maybe you're covering some stuff up, and this is all like, these are the ways that these different, what do you want to call it, energies, spirits, like things that aren't in your greatest alignment, reflections of you, your shadow self. These are all things that are like that we're able to clear out, and it's a constant process, I've found.
Yeah, it's huge. I think it's hard to put into words some of this stuff, because when you experience it, you know it. Otherwise, it's just, you know, words kind of fail. I kind of sense that with people, like I said, within a very short moment. Like first time I met Lynn, and then again, like at my house, I invited him to my house one time, and he came around and just chatting down, sitting for tea with my mum. But he has like such a calm energy and presence. You just kind of sense it when you're around him. And I'm not even joking, Lynn. Like, there's very few people I can say that about. But you just feel like totally safe. Like you have no worries. This guy will have your back, whatever happens. And, you know, never mind he's a martial arts trainer, whatever, but just the energy you sense, this guy is like not sucking anything from you, has no drama, has no issues, no, like, I don't know, weird shit he's hold on to. Like, you sense that with those people. They're nice people, but they're not at ease. They have something that's holding on to them. They have something they haven't, you know, let go. And I've seen people before and after sometimes when they've gone through experiences, and then they're a completely different person afterwards. But I just sense that with Lynn, I sense it with other people in this group as well. Like that energy is just super calm. You feel very safe around it. You don't have to be on guard and all this kind of stuff. And it's very different. Like what I mean is that in London, in the city where I meet Lynn, like there's all kinds of people, mostly I would say don't have their shit together, energy together. And so you always have to feel a little bit guarded when you're around people, just to kind of, just how I am. I'm sensing all the time, perceiving it all the time. And in cities, I learned to be a lot more guarded to make sure people aren't getting into my energy field. And I think a lot of what Nick was saying earlier about giving consent, we don't realize where we've given consent away for this stuff to happen. Like when we're all drinking alcohol, because that's just the way you're conditioned from young. You think this is some part of growing up, but actually it's a big part of losing your sovereignty. So it's like everything is inverted in society, where like, oh, you can drink now because you're 18. That's the very dumbest thing you can do. And you think by drinking younger, you're maturing at a younger age. Like, yeah, I can drink now, 15, 16. I can, you know, do all these things even earlier and be even cool, whatever. And actually, you're just giving away your sovereignty even earlier and earlier before you mature enough to understand what effect these substances and spirits are having on you. And so I think that understanding where you've given consent away is a big part of that awareness of how you take it back. And like, you know, I used to drink for fun even after I discovered all this stuff, but I just found I needed less and less and less as I was in nature more. I wasn't getting anything from the alcohol. It wasn't even giving me that nice sort of edge or whatever, you know, people talk about. So I just kind of gave it up. It requires zero willpower. I just tend to not do it. And I had the odd glass a few months ago, Christmas or something, and I was just like, oh, it does nothing for me. Like it's just gone away almost. So that, you know, that consent that I'd spent probably 10, 15 years of my life, not even thinking, sort of mindlessly giving that away. And then obviously when you're around people, other people who are in a city who don't have energy together, then again, you're making yourself more vulnerable. So I think that there's a lot we can do in any environment to kind of shield ourselves better, be more aware of what, you know, decisions we're making and how that's affecting our sovereignty. And for me, just sensing people's energy was a big part of it. So yeah, that's the story I thought I'd share.
Cool. I definitely sense Lynn's energy over the internet as well. So I don't know if I'm sensitive of it's Lynn's energy that's just super big, reaching all the way.
No, but it's like Mike saying, everyone in this group is, what's the chances that he's managed to cultivate, you know, her together these people where it's, I could say the same thing to probably everyone that I've interacted with, even if I only interacted with them once on the chat. It's very, very true how you managed to get everyone together. That's on that, running that sort of energy, that vibe. It's lovely. It is lovely. I'm not even to think twice or choose my words, although I try not to anyway. Yeah, you're spot on about that. Good bunch here.
Cool. I don't know if there's any other areas you wanted to touch on, because you talked quite a bit at the beginning. You touched on a lot of stuff. I'm not sure if we missed anything. From like the basis of energy, and then we got all the way to energy vampirism at the other spectrum. Which is definitely a powerful influence today. So I don't think there's anything else that you wanted to cover.
I think we probably covered most. I just sat down 20 minutes before this call and all this stuff just came through. So I hope I didn't confuse too much, but I think we had a really good talk about everything, and I got some really good tips about how to clean my energy. And I think it's only going to be more and more important for a lot of more people when they start to getting sensitized again to nature and getting in touch with their energy bodies and getting in touch with all these things that no one never taught them how to work with. Because I think most people, even like totally regular people, can sense in a room when the energy changes. If someone says something really silly or something really stupid, you can feel the energy drop. Like also I don't feel it as much with these conversations, but with other conversations with people, you can have a flow going and like conversations flowing, everything, and then suddenly it just drops. You can feel the shift in energy. And I think that's kind of like one easy way to tell that something has changed. And I think that sense just gets stronger and stronger with everything. When you meet someone, you look in their eyes and you can feel like there's an exchange going on, and there's definitely something happened that we don't know much about yet, but it's not gonna get any less from here. I feel it's just gonna build and build, and it's really important to share tools to navigate in that world, because it's been lost for most of us. And definitely the shamans have a lot of experience in that, and probably a lot of the deep meditators and stuff have. But let's keep digging and keep learning. It's kind of like a Jedi school as well, like learning all these new cool tricks that no one ever taught us how to figure out.
Just before we go, like one last thing I just wanted to mention is, like, Michael touched on like giving consent, and we're talking about like deepening our relationship with the elements. And I think something that's a worthwhile exercise is setting our intention for interaction with technology and artificial intelligence, and the ways in which we give consent and the ways in which we interact. This is kind of what I was touching on earlier with like phasing out of technology that's harmful to us. So as we're in a car, or we've got Bluetooth, or we're using our computer, or we're interacting with these devices, which, on some level might not be great for our physical health, I think it's definitely worthwhile of like, setting the intention of our relationship with technology, as weird as that sounds, and having boundaries and being clear about what's okay and what's not okay with our consent and these kind of things. So I think it's definitely like part of like the purification process, because technology is a part of our lives,
Yeah, it's actually really important. I think we'll do a whole nother show on that. Maybe Nick, you can do that. But I was actually going to share as well a big part of like maintaining your energy and your shield. A lot is to do with sleep. When you're sleeping, is a big part of repair for the body. And we have such bad sleep hygiene around technology, we don't even think about it. Like we let it into our bedrooms. We're on it, before we go to sleep. We're on it when we wake up. And this became like a normal pattern of habit for me. I guess it's some kind of weird hooks, that it becomes kind of addictive in that sense, and you want to check in on the world around you, and it just becomes totally unconscious. And for the last 3 months, basically, I had an experiment where I wouldn't take any phone, any tech into the bedroom. It was completely no lights, nothing, just like a dumb room. You go in there purely to sleep at dark. And then at night, we're only using candles now. We're not using any lights. So in basic sort of, sleep hygiene stuff. But just that experiment for like 3 months now, I felt like, I wouldn't say my sleep is like suddenly the best or it's fixed everything, but energetically I feel it's such a nice space to go into, because I know when I go in there, that's my time for my body, my mind to regenerate, recharge, and then I face the world the next day. And if you don't have that, so that routine or that resting place, you're just constantly bombarded, because again, your mind doesn't have the chance to shut down, because you're constantly maybe watching Netflix in bed or whatever it is people are doing these days. It's like you have no separation. There's no point where you take away that consent and you say, right, that's enough technology over there, I'm going to go over here. And I think we need to create that in our environments a lot more. Around sleep is huge, because that's when we repair the body, and that's when, a lot of things happen that gives you that resilience for the next day. So I think sleep hygiene, we can have another show on or whatever, but that's an example where, giving consent to technology and being aware of where it's kind of maybe running too much into your life. And I'm using my laptop less and less these days. Like honestly, 2 to 3 hours a day is more than enough. And I used to spend 10, 12-hour days on a laptop. So things like that, as you become more aware, you start to give consent, more sparingly.
Yeah, and there is just to wrap this up, there is plenty of sort of science around like not using devices at night time, like a few hours before you go to sleep, so you can unwind. And then the last point I wanted to drop in, because we're talking about sleep, is just that we can set our intention for our sleep. People talk about lucid dreaming, or not even that. It's just deepening that relationship with our sleep, and setting the intention, for our higher self, or sleep guardians, or whatever it is that your thing is, like to help you during your sleep process, so you can deepen your relationship with it. Because as we sort of bridge those worlds between the awake state and the dream state, and they do become sort of less sort of separate, then and we're able to navigate more. It's sort of part of that process is deepening that relationship and setting those intention with the sleep, so we can be clear in our sleep state, and so that mix with the technology stuff is part of that process.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely learning how to navigate between those worlds. And like you said, it seems kind of separate at the moment. Like we don't even think about dreams because they're kind of like, it's an unproductive part of our day. We can't make money or something, so it's like we dismiss it. But there's a whole powerful part of our ability to sense into worlds and pull meaning back. And if you have good sleep hygiene and you have a good intention, like you said, when you go to bed, you can connect a lot more between the dream and waking states. And there's some powerful messages there. Like I've been dreaming quite vivid. That's one example of just having better sleep hygiene and just having that room purely, for sleep time, but also more interested with my partner. We're not on our devices. We're connected a lot more, and that feels like it's definitely deepened our relationship in a lot of ways. So just subtle things you maybe not appreciate. Over 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, you start to see, oh, there's definitely something has shifted. Something's definitely changed. But yeah, we'll probably do another show on sleep because that's pretty powerful stuff.
Cool. That's probably a good note to end on. So thanks a lot, everyone. It was great talking to you again, and see you Thursday.
Yeah, see you later on. Take care, guys.
Great chat, guys.
Thanks, guys. That was awesome.
Catch you soon. Bye.